19.
I'm Michael Lagello on location, which is apparently a good thing because the Buffalo City Hall was raided by the FBI yesterday.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology, just enjoying the nice weather.
And I am Eklund. It's a beautiful, beautiful fall day. You're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is a podcast that comes to you every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And we started right off the top today because we wanted to get into everything. And from what I understand in the chat room, I'm being told that Mike and Russ this week have been downplaying the Isles streak. We've been downplaying the Islanders streak. Is that true?
We said it exists. We gave all the credit to Barry Trotz.
We know it exists.
Well, I'm just going through the list.
Okay.
We said that everybody's bought into it. We did say they don't have enough offense. They don't have enough offense, but they're winning games. Like, what else do they want us to say?
Yeah, I guess
we're not going to call them the best team in hockey because they're not.
Yeah, and I mean, do I think this is for real? No, but I have to give them credit because they won 10 games in a row. But let me see, a team that won 10 games in a row and then finished almost dead last for the remainder of the regular season. Who was that? Oh, the Buffalo Sabres. That happened last year.
All right. Yes, but this team made the playoffs last year. This is a good team.
Right, but the question is, and I think they have more. He has more points now than the last time I looked, which was last Saturday. But do you think a team that has a top scorer with 10 points, which Josh Bailey had when they played Buffalo last Saturday, they need more scoring. If they don't get more scoring, still think they're a borderline team to make the playoffs. Can Grice and Varlamov continue at a .930 save percentage? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, and my story today is going to be a little bit talking about Robin Leonard too, which is another obviously had a great year last year with that Islanders. That Islanders team defense really looks like it makes goalies look good, right? I mean, there's no question about that. And that's something that Barry Trotz's teams have done forever in Nashville too. So it's not a new thing with Barry Trotz run teams. I think this is way more impressive than last year. I want to say for the Islanders. I'm going to give them a lot of props here because last year people definitely did not expect that they were going to be much of anything, and then they had just lost John Tavares and everyone was saying this is it. To me, this streak is they're doing it now and everybody knows that they're good. So they really do. I mean, this is way harder than last year. This is the year that I thought everybody would be like, okay, well, the Islanders aren't going to take anybody by surprise, and we're going to have to fight everything in all the typical hockey cliches we talk about all the time. And instead, what's happening is they are actually they're even at a better pace than they were last year right now, right? So that to me is a hell of a sign. And although they don't have a lot of offense, I agree with you. And they did try their best to get Panarin in the summer. And maybe he wishes he went there right about now. No, I don't think so. But I'm just saying. They are still trying to get help too. And I don't think that Lou is completely 100% set on this offense at all. And I think that you'll still see them try to do things. Although I did write a little while ago, and I do believe this to be true, that when talking to people on the island, they said that Lou had said that they were early in the season. They were very much looking to get offense to add to the team.
Well, just a perfect example is last year, like when they faced Carolina, right? The first game was 1-0. They lost. The second game was 2-1. Then they lost 5-2. Then they lost 5-2. And that's probably what would happen with this exact lineup in the playoffs again if they played Carolina, simply because you can't play every game 1-0, 2-1 when you don't have offensive push. That is their problem. It's going to continue.
Especially in a division where you're going to play probably Pittsburgh when Malkin comes back and they're fully healthy, and Crosby, or Washington, who's been an absolute freaking juggernaut so far this season. I'm not taking anything away from the Islanders. They deserve all the credit in the world for what they've done so far. But do I think it's for real? No, I don't. They have to prove it to me. I know last year is a completely different thing. I mean, they had Leonard, who stoned people blind for half the year, and he's no longer there anymore. Can Varlamov stay healthy? Can they get enough offense? Will they keep Noah Dobson on defense, or they send him back to junior or wherever he has to go to not burn a year of entry level? There are a number of questions that have to be asked about the Islanders. Yeah, I mean, but right now, they deserve credit.
Just remember, I mean, Varlamov didn't even get – I don't even think he played in the playoffs for Colorado after having a good season because of his injury. So if Grice were your number one playoff guy, how many series can they go with Thomas Grice in that? Come on, Eck, tell us.
How many series can they go with Thomas Grice in net?
Yeah.
Well, I think they can go – I mean, yeah, if Varlamov's hurt, you're right. They're in trouble. I agree with
Okay.
you. But if Varlamov's healthy in the playoffs,
Yeah, that could make a difference.
they could. I mean, Varlamov is the kind of guy who can get hot, right? We know that.
We've
If
seen
he's
it.
hot, that's the key, right? Grice, I think Grice can win around, definitely, like he did last year, or not. He didn't do last year. Leonard. I mean, you know me. Last year I was on the Grice bandwagon, and you're wrong. And I've been a big fan of Grice ever since he was in San Jose. I really do believe in the guy. I think he's a better than your average backup. Put it that way. And he's proving that, right? So he's proving that he's better than your average backup. So they're saying you're a biased Rangers fan.
Right.
I know that's not true, but
You should have seen how much I wrote about John Tavares before.
Russ grew up on the island. Don't forget that.
I did, but people forget like how much I pushed that the Islanders should get Tavares, how it could turn their franchise around. Like whatever. I'm just telling you the truth. If you want to ask me the truth about the Rangers, we could do them next.
Yeah, all right. Is it the system? All right. That's what someone in there saying. Is it the system?
A lot of it is the system. Yes.
A lot of it is the system. I mean, I think the system is a huge thing in hockey. There's no two ways about it. For years, it was the system that kept the Detroit Red Wings, being able to go with with Chris Osgood in goal, for example. Like I thought, and win Stanley Cups. I mean, I think Osgood's a good goalie too, but I don't think he's your. I'm not on the Osgood should be in the Hall of Fame bandwagon, even though I love the guy as a guy. I just think Osgood should not be in. I think that it is the system. There's no question about it. But the system only works if the goalie can give the team the confidence to play the system too. You have to remember that.
Okay. Here's
the confidence. Hold on. Like I'm seeing, and again, a fan posted ticket prices for the other night, right? $6 seats for the Islanders. So how come the fans haven't bought into this?
Well, I have no way of confirming this, so maybe one of you can look. I thought I heard because the Leafs play on Long Island next Wednesday the third time that Tavares. Did that game get moved to Nassau Coliseum or is that one of Barclays?
I don't know. Somebody in the chat room might know. For sure. I mean, Thomas goes to most of these games in there, I think. But let's. I want to kind of move on from that and get to. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, let me because you mentioned Detroit.
Yeah.
And there was it's a minor deal, but I think it's an interesting deal we should all talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not a consequential deal, but names that we all know. Robbie Fabry traded from the Blues for Jakob de la Rose. Now, de la Rose was a former second-round pick of the Canadiens, was picked up, I believe, on waivers by Detroit last year. Actually, I had more hopes for De La Rosa being more of an impact player, but it seems that he's going to be more of a third, fourth liner at best. Fabry, Russ, I mean, it's a situation where the first couple years he looked like he could be, I don't know about a star, but a really good player and has just gone in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I just think he needed to change the scenery. I'm going to leave it at that, and we'll see what happens in his next location. He's got the talent. But, if you remember, they barely played him. I don't even know if he played a game in the Stanley Cup. I don't think he did.
I don't think he did.
Yeah, he did. He did after Robert Thomas got hurt.
Oh, that's right. So when Thomas got hurt. Otherwise, he wasn't going to play.
Yeah. He's definitely been one of those guys. The Islanders are listed as Nassau Coliseum, so that's what the response is. Yeah, so there we go. I think I mean, Fabry is one of those guys, like having St. Louis Blues fans as friends, who before they won the Stanley Cup was a big focus of my friends in St. Louis. Like Fabry was always one of those guys. When's he going to get hurt? When's he going to come up? He's always hurt. He plays a great game. He looks fantastic. Then he gets hurt again. And it seemed like it was such a soap opera in St. Louis. I think you're right. This is a case where a guy needs to change of pace, and just have to get out of that situation. That situation is not healthy for him at all. It really isn't. So moving on to for a second, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it goes. And it is interesting because it is Steve Yzerman, right? So that gives you something too. Like Yzerman makes little moves like this, and he made some of these kind of moves in Tampa that really did end up turning Tampa into a solid team. I think he looks for these kind of
yeah, no doubt.
Right, there's no question about it. This is what he's doing. He's really good.
Well, he's doing what he can do without. I mean, because, and we said this when Kevin was on the show a couple of days ago, the moves that Yzerman has to make are the moves that will be the toughest. And that is moving out Franz Nielsen, Abdelkader, Helm, maybe Glenn Denning, trading some of the rental defensemen like Mike Green or Trevor Daley. Those are the moves that are, he has to do that will define his tenure in Detroit. But he's made these other moves like getting Adam Ernie, bringing in Perlini, now bringing in Fabry. These are low risk, guys on short-term deals, guys who are being given an opportunity to to restart their career. And if he hits on one of them, it's successful because, then he gets a player basically for nothing.
But let's talk about Detroit for a minute, because they did play the Rangers yesterday, and like Tony DeAngelo ate them up. Basically, the Rangers ate them up. Detroit is one of the worst teams that I've seen in years. I think even when the Sabres were trying to tank, they may have been better than Detroit. I mean, Jimmy Howard gave up just an awful goal. They really, there's not much there. And look, they have some good players, but I saw Adam Ernie's in front of the net. There's only so much he can do. There's not that many guys who can even shoot the puck to get it on net. Athanasiou looks good, they have 4 good players, and the rest are really just guys you're filling in. Guys like Joe Hicketts, who have been in the minors for years, they finally elevate them. These guys are okay, but when you put a whole team of them out there, you are guaranteed to come in last.
But Russ, it was rivalry night.
Yeah. In 1950, it was a rivalry.
Yeah, I mean, there's still 2 of the original 6 teams, right? I mean, this is my dad grew up a Detroit Red Wings fan. Gordie Howe was his favorite player. He lived in Collingswood, New Jersey, and would ride his bike to Madison Square Garden when the Red Wings came to town. So he would ride, he would ride his bicycle from Collingswood, New Jersey to.
How many? And what would that take? A half a day? A day?
Yeah, it would take. I think it took him 4 or 5 hours. I think.
Was it in the snow?
No, it wasn't in the snow.
Okay.
But it was definitely one of those things. I mean, it took more than that, probably. It took more. He never really talked about how long it took. He wasn't that kind of guy, but he definitely did it a lot. And I saw all the ticket stubs and everything like that. He was definitely one of those guys who that was the only way to get there, and he was a huge bicyclist. So that was a fun time, and that at that point, there was definitely the Red Wings and Rangers.
Yeah, sure.
They were a thing. And they have been in recent years too, but when both teams were still solid.
I mean, the last time they had a good rivalry was, and I was at a game in the blue seats in the Garden when Ty Domi fought Joey Kocur. They had 3 fights that night. That was the last ditch effort of their rivalry. After that, it started to wane. But that was a good rivalry night, and that was in the 90s.
Yeah, that's a lie. It's a long time ago.
A long time ago.
90s are a long time ago now. They're the 90s.
Doesn't sound like it is, but it is.
It really is. Someone born in 1990.
Tell me about it.
Drink. Someone who born in 1999 can legally drink or something 1998, right? So there you go.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Robin Leonard for a second today because as you guys know, last year I was on the Grice bandwagon, and Robin Leonard, wasn't. I really was kind of upset when they played Robin Leonard in all the playoff games. I thought Grice deserved more of a shot on the island, but there's nothing against Robin Leonard. I was kind of surprised when he got the Vezina voting, and I've never even going back, to Buffalo and what was it, Ottawa before that, right? I've never really been a real Leonard fan. He plays a weird style of goalie. He looks very out of position to me. Looks like he's guessing a lot. And I've always kind of been rough on him. And so the other day when we were on the show, I was looking at his numbers. And I was like, whoa, hold on a second. This guy has been you would think, if you watch the Chicago Blackhawks, just the highlights, he lets up, you see the goals he lets up. You're thinking to yourself, Robin Leonard's been terrible this year because he really does let up weird goals and what seemed like bad goals. And his reaction to them is always emotional. He's one of those goalies that just is, frustrated by everything. And I'm not a big fan of frustrated goalies. So Brzgalov is my sister. He was at my sister's dentist yesterday. Speaking of which,
anyway, for that update.
Yeah, sure. But this is the kind of difficulty that I've never.
Did he have a root canal or a bridge?
He has a lot of good teeth. He said apparently. My sister works there at the dentist. Anyways, here we go. Robin Leonard this year. The Hawks are 9 points out of a playoff spot. They are. Everyone knows I kind of picked them to be to win the division. This is the most wrong I could have been at this point. But I never picked in a million years that, that at this point we have John Tavares would have 8 points. That's to me, not John Tavares. I'm sorry.
Jonathan Taves.
Thank you. Jonathan Taves would have 8 points, right? Or yeah, and going into the weekend, he had 2. He didn't even string goal until this past weekend. He didn't even string point until this past weekend. This guy had 81 points last year. I thought at least he would be. How do you go from so hot to so cold so quickly, right? But Robin Leonard is, when you look at in the 9 games he's played, he's 3-3-2, and his save percentage is .935, puts him at 5th in the NHL in save percentages. His goals against is .233, which is 12th among the 50 goalies who played this. No, I'm sorry, the 65 goalies who played this year.
Yeah.
So
well, if you think about it, Ek, I mean, they have an awful defense, and I just looked it up. They have the worst offense in the NHL. I want that to settle in for a minute, and that's why Jeremy Colleton's job will be in trouble, because they have the fewest goals in the NHL. Period.
Yeah, fewest goals. Period, and that is crazy because they should not have that. They have plenty of talent in there. Plenty of offensive talent besides Jonathan Taves, who should not go down this far. I mean, he's getting a little bit better lately, but this is crazy. It's just crazy. So, and then when you look at Crawford as well, like the other goalie, right? You compare him to Corey Crawford, it becomes even more eye-opening because Crawford's 1-4. He's got like a .374 goals against average and an .883 save percentage, which is like 60th among 65 goalies. So you're looking at such a drastic difference between Leonard and Crawford this year. It's incredible.
I mean, they're only 3-3-2 at home. Just think about that.
I know. This is and that place no one can win it usually. So so let me
go ahead.
I finish my thought here. The thing that really you have to think about here is you've got a team in Chicago that still believes they can do something, and then you have a team. And you still have talent on there. You still have players. You obviously have defense. We've talked plenty about that. The Seabrook and Duncan Keith, downturn. But in Leonard, you have perhaps one of the more interesting trade deadline possibilities for people, because he really is. If the Hawks are not going to make the playoffs, he's there, on a real short-term deal. Just he was kind of goalie that got left out last year in the goalie, great goalie shuffle or whatever, and he's. And I talked to somebody in Chicago, and they said the thing about him was that the team plays more confident in front of him. And I know we've talked about this a lot. Russ and I have talked about this a lot too in the press box of how I'm a big fan of the fact that confident goalies make the whole team play better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a huge difference. And for years I've been trying to find a way statistically to quantify confidence in your goalie, which is a really hard thing to do, right? So I've been trying to think of what could that possibly be, and then I came up with something that I think is close. And you guys tell me if you like it or not. And you guys in the chat room, I would love to hear this as well. And then we'll move on to other things. But I think, what tells me something about a goalie is how many goals he allows on the power play. All right. So your goalie is your best penalty killer. So if you have a goalie who's going to allow fewer goals on the power play, that means, you don't know, they don't keep the stats, or at least I'm able to find them, the stats of how many times a team takes a penalty with a certain goalie in net. But you would think a team that's not confident in their goalie is definitely going to take more penalties because they're going to try to stop, they're going to pull, they're going to hook, they're going to be afraid, they're going to be nervous, and they're going to be edgy, and they're not going to just trust the guy if he's around him that he's going to, the goalie's going to make the stops. So not knowing how many times they've given up goals, I looked at Leonard's. Leonard has given up 19 goals, not knowing how many times they've given up power plays, I should say. Leonard's given up 19 goals in his 9 games, and only 2 of them have come when the team's been shorthanded. So he's only given up 2 goals. Shorthanded, and then Crawford has given up 22 goals in 6 games, and 7 of them have come shorthanded. So you can immediately think that either they're taking way more penalties with Crawford in goal, or Crawford not living up to what he has to do because he's played in less games. And I think there's something to that statistic. I think there's something to that goals allowed statistic. And on the shorthanded, because it shows, first of all, just even beyond all other things, if you're not giving up goals on the penalty kill, your goalie's playing pretty darn well. And that gives you confidence. You coming out, you kill a penalty off, that gives the team confidence. And the goalie has to be a big part of it. Leonard is really a kind of goalie whose style is suited for penalty killing. He is very big. He is very much, you're going to have to beat him.
Positionally, that's why I think he's set up for that, because a lot of times when teams work the power play, goalies can figure it out. If there's a certain rotation and a certain way they do it, a goalie can anticipate. The only time a goalie can't figure out the power play is when you have guys that actually move around a lot and you take away his eyes. Otherwise, a goalie can figure out how you're doing the power play.
Yeah. I totally agree with that, and I think this. So I'm going to go through and look at some of the other goalies in the next couple days and see if there's anything to this confidence thing.
If there's a stat or there's a place that tracks how many point blank scoring chances they're giving up, I'm pretty sure the Blackhawks are close to the league leader in that.
They really are, and you see the highlights of the goals against. You see Leonard as frustrated. You don't necessarily not necessarily frustrated by that goal he gave up, but he's frustrated by the fact he's had to make so many saves.
Right, you make 7 saves, and all of a sudden you make one that doesn't look great, and it's like, ugh.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the interesting thing about the Blackhawks goaltending situation is you have both two goalies making around the same amount of money, and both are UFAs at the end of the year. And I know that Elliot Friedman reported about a month ago that there were a couple players in the league who essentially the GMs have a contract in the drawer ready to sign after January 1st when like a UFA or an RFA can sign an extension. One of them was Russ's favorite, Kevin LeBanc in San Jose, because he signed a $1 million contract, and they're going to extend him because they didn't have the cap space to do it this year. The other one, according to Friedman, was Leonard. That Leonard, essentially that if there's going to be a trade, now he didn't say this, but I'm drawing conclusions. Yeah. If they're going to trade a UFA guy, it's going to be Crawford, because Crawford has been chronically injured the last couple of years. And if he stays healthy, maybe some team that's looking to add up a goalie with playoff experience could trade for Crawford. But I think Leonard is a keeper for the Blackhawks.
No, I do too. And I think, honestly, at this point in Crawford's career, I think he'd be okay with, hey, if he goes there, he has to kind of prove it and maybe even split time. I think he'd be okay with that.
Yeah, maybe you would. I mean, I think you make a good point, Mike, in that Crawford obviously he's won Stanley Cups. I mean, he's got that huge that you don't often get a chance to make. If you can get a backup who has won Stanley Cups, I go back to the days of like the Flyers and Chico Resch when he was back behind Hextall. Like Resch was, he was on those Islanders teams that won Stanley Cups. He wasn't usually Billy Smith was the guy, but the idea was that definitely. I mean, Crawford is absolutely being held together. Someone said in the chat room, being held together by duct tape, and I totally agree. Crawford there's no question. He is just. I mean, there were people this year that really thought Crawford was going to retire before the season started. There were many people who thought that, and I wonder if this continues like this, how long that'll go.
And he may well very well retire and end his career as strictly a Blackhawk. And I mean he. 2 Stanley Cup winners. We were talking about Osgood before. It's like, okay, which one of the 2 Stanley Cup winning goaltenders that they're not in the Hall of Fame right now? Crawford, Barrasso, Osgood make the Hall of Fame.
Barrasso would make it over the
in the Hall of Fame. We talked about this the other night.
Yeah.
I mean, Barrasso. I mean, let's just say his personality or his reputation in terms of his personality rhymes with his name.
Wow. I like that.
No, but that's well established. I mean, a lot of people think that the only thing keeping him from the Hall of Fame is that he's been caustic with the media. Caustic with the media.
Yeah. I remember I never covered Barrasso. I think Mike, you did. I mean, Russ, you did maybe.
No, I never had the pleasure.
Time, right? Like a little bit before our time, maybe. Before my time.
No, it was just before me.
Yeah. So, I mean, but I heard about the stories, and I never pictured about the stories. That he was just a terrible guy to deal with. And Buffalo is obviously notorious when he was in Buffalo as being a terrible guy. In Pittsburgh, I heard he was a little bit better, but still, just like a nasty character, which is which I get. I mean, that's the media hates those kind of guys. And it's interesting because that was a time period when the media really wasn't like now you would hear a lot more of that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine if Twitter was around with Barrasso, like you would have heard like how
no, yeah. He a lot was let go.
Tons.
I mean, Russ, I would equate him with Jim Rice in baseball. I mean, in terms of a borderline Hall of Famer, and eventually he got in, but he had to wait 15 or 20 years because the media hated his guts.
Well, yeah. So in order for him to get in the Hall of Fame, Barrasso to get in the Hall of Fame, somebody's going to have to champion him. And I don't know who's on the committee right now, like as far as the Hall of Famers go, Hall of Fame committee, because it changes all the time. But I remember when talking to Eric Tahashik about this a while ago, and I think he's off the committee now because you're on for a certain amount of years. And Yeah, that was the whole thing. Someone has to champion, and then someone has to go into that meeting and explain why. And I don't think explaining why is tough for Brasa, but someone championing him, that's going to be tricky.
Yeah.
It would have to be somebody probably from within Pittsburgh's organization, I would guess, like somebody like Rutherford or somebody like that. Who's
Or well, I would be surprised if he doesn't have a big champion in Scotty Bowman. Scotty Bowman drafted him in Buffalo as an 18.
Right.
He won Rookie of the Year as an 18-year-old in Buffalo, and then Bowman got traded. I believe he was either GM or coach in Pittsburgh when they traded for him, and he won 2 Stanley. Although they might have been, I think he would have been GM, and Bob Johnson might have been coach the first year. But Bowman probably had a hand in bringing him. So I would be surprised if Bowman wasn't a champion of Barrasso in terms of his making this, getting into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. That could be. I have a couple other interesting things that just from last night, some sort of around the league, some fun stuff I found. The Canadians, okay, who are in town tonight to play the Flyers. I'm going to be going to that game. Are 4th in goals per games played, despite not having a player in the top 50 in the NHL in points. So it's obviously just looking at balanced scoring there in Montreal, but that to me is something that we've seen that, this is the reason that Canadians are doing this, is they're just getting scoring all over the place. And the reason that I think that they are the place that you're most likely to see Jesse Pujärvi end up, in my opinion. I think Montreal is the place for him. Montreal also has, remember, we can talk about both situations, but Pujärvi, his problem in the NHL was not just that he wasn't maybe ready to play yet. His problem was very social, as far as learning about North America and stuff like that, and then being kind of like in Edmonton, which is sort of, you would think, kind of like a Finnish type town, but still very, not a lot of Finns on that team and stuff like that. The Canadians have 4 or 5 Finns on their team.
Well, it's weird. It's weird that you mentioned Montreal because they haven't been mentioned before, but the teams that have been mentioned over the last couple of weeks, Carolina with Aho, Teravainen, you've got a support structure there that Finns. There was a report, I believe it was Chris Johnston from Sportsnet on Saturday, that said the Rangers were interested in Pujärvi, and obviously they have Kakko, who's the number 2 overall pick. They essentially want somebody coming in there who, a countryman who maybe, be able to play with them. That makes sense. Montreal would make sense, but again, it's the return that Ken Holland is looking for. And, I get the feeling based on what he would be looking for from, say, a Carolina. I don't know if the price he's asking for is commensurate with what teams are willing to pay for a guy who's a question mark right now. He's playing great in the Finnish league, but
I'll be honest though, I don't even think the Rangers would trade for him because I have very little doubt that David Quinn would play him. As an example, lately Elias Anderson can't get over 10 minutes, 11 minutes in the game. He's gotten played as few as 8:48. And as high as 10:50, 13 minutes one game, but he's been right around the 10-minute mark lately. And it's like, what are they going to do with Pujärvi? If he doesn't score right away, Quinn's going to do the same thing. So I don't think he would even trade for him.
Russ, if you're Jeff Gordon, are you trading an Anderson, a Cheadle, a young defenseman? Are you trading that for Pujärvi, who's a question mark?
No, because I already see how the coach is sort of working with these young guys. I could trade one of them that the coach isn't using, but this next guy could turn into that same issue. So no, I would not trade assets for that.
Yeah.
And if you're
the right team,
right? And if you're Carolina, they're probably Carolina probably wants to offer one of their excess defensemen like Fleury or Trevor Van Riemsdyk. I would doubt that they would trade a guy like Jake Bean. Fleury's had a couple chances in the NHL. Van Riemsdyk's making over $2 million, so they want to pare down some of their salary. With Montreal, who are you trading? Are you trading Ryan Poehling?
You want to be honest?
I
think when he gets traded, because it's gone this long, that he's going to end up getting traded for something like a conditional second. I don't even know.
I'm with you, Russ. I'm totally with you. And I think right now I've heard, that the price is high, but of course Holland has no reason not to keep it super high right now. Right. It doesn't help him at all. Like there's no point in trading him right now. The point is, that teams will get more desperate. It's got to be before the end of December, obviously, but you don't have a lot of, you have a ton of time for that happens, and he's not on your team. So it's like he's not playing for you. So there's no reason for him to keep the price, not to keep the price really high. But then there's going to come a point at which I think he's going to sit back and say, we got to get something for this guy, because if he plays a whole year in Finland and isn't impressive, then, and he's been.
And his value is shot.
What was that?
If he does that, then his value is shot.
Totally shot.
But he has been impressive. He's got 11 goals in 18 games with Carpat. And actually the time is running up because and I know this because of the Nylander situation last year. It's December 1 at 5:00. At 5 o'clock on December 1, if he's not traded, then he can't play in the NHL next year. And it can't be that they wait until 4:59 or whatever on December 1, because then the other team has got to sign him to be able to get him to play in the NHL. So, I mean, I think the deal is going to happen, but I think Colin's going to have to lower his price, because if he's holding out for like a first-round pick or a player who was a first-round pick, I don't think he's getting that. And that's sad, because this is a number 4 overall pick.
Yeah,
a number 4, and
a lot of people are saying, I've heard a lot of people talk about Winnipeg a lot. Like, okay, you bring him in there. Obviously, he and Patrick Laine were a dynamic duo for Finland. And they really had a lot of chemistry together. But
if you want to be more real, that was in the past.
Right.
If Puljujarvi were doing what he's doing right now in the AHL, his trade value would be much higher, because then teams would be like, look, we see he's doing it in North America. The style of play is similar. It's not that big of a reach.
Right.
In Liga, it's a bit of a reach. It's not a huge reach, but there is a reach factor that some GMs are not going to want to, go deep in on.
Yeah.
And apparently there are NHL general managers going over to Europe. He's going to be involved in, I think it's called the Karjala Cup.
Yeah.
And now, okay, it's all fine and good that he dominates there, but I mean, it's like the Spengler Cup. I mean, who cares?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's not NHL caliber. And if it's not NHL caliber, then it really proves nothing. I mean, the fact that he scored 11 goals in 18 games in the Finnish league is great. It's better than him scoring no goals. Yeah. But it's still a question of whether he can translate that into being effective at the NHL level.
I mean, it's similar to like when guys go and dominate the world championships. They get a contract, but they get a very meager contract. They don't get great contracts coming off of that.
You really don't. He's got to show he can do it in North America. There's no two ways about it. Yeah. And he's got to show he can.
At the end of the day, he does.
Yeah, he's really. That's the whole bottom line. He really, really does. Okay, here's something that you guys will be happy to laugh in my face about. So I thought I would bring this up because we don't.
I always want to say we don't look for those moments; they just pop up.
I know. I'm really, believe me, my wife says the same thing.
They just happen, and we're overjoyed when they do.
I know. James Neal. The last 9 games has 1 assist and is a -10. All right, so we talked about off the incredible start, and I was one of the reasons I picked Edmonton there. I thought James Neal would have a nice rebound, and I was of course didn't think he'd have the rebound he had in the beginning of the season, which was insanity. But and now it probably is like it's evened out. But this is the kind of thing that is just crazy, like to me, like that a player can go that hot and that cold in the course of the first 20 games of an NHL season. Like
he just did the opposite in Calgary. Like he just never got hot.
Right.
So he stayed cold because he has these huge bouts of inconsistency. That's James Neal in it right now.
-10. Like, that's like that number is just the 1 point is one thing, and -10 is another. That's just an enormous.
I don't know who was on his line at this point.
He's been moving around a lot lately.
Yeah.
Because he's struggling.
Yeah, I think he's playing with Nugent Hopkins, I believe.
Still, you shouldn't be a -10 with Nugent Hopkins, honestly.
Yeah, Nugent Hopkins is a pretty good player.
Well, I was going to bring up because there were only 2 games in the league last night, and the Blues are red hot, and they played the Oilers. And Russ, Connor McDavid, 21 minutes, 42 seconds. Leon Draisaitl, 23 minutes, 26 seconds. These guys are going to croak. They're playing them too much. And you're starting to see it. I mean, I watched about 2 periods of this game, and they were simply outclassed. And it's other than the times that McDavid and Draisaitl were on the ice, The Blues completely outclassed them. And this is the point. They may have 2 of the top 10 players in the league. They got nothing else after that, and their goaltending is not good enough to hold them in the games.
No, it's true. I did watch a couple big chunks of that game. For one thing, nobody says Croaks anymore, but I appreciate it. It's a blast from the past. That first goal by Jake Allen, I hated, but I will say this. He did batten down the hatches the rest of the game. So that one, I think, sort of shocked him because that wasn't McDavid's finest goal. It just was a goal Jake Allen, I think, gave up short side that he probably just needed to hug the post a little better. But I will tell you, Mike Smith gave up some bad goals.
Yeah.
Mike Smith did not look settled. They had no problem pointing out Mike Smith on the Blues broadcast on things he was doing wrong because they had Darren Pang right there. Darren Pang can see what you're doing wrong. He knows.
Yeah. No, he definitely.
Yeah, he did him wrong in the NHL before Mike. Just kidding, Derek.
Next up tonight, obviously you have Toronto and Vegas, and
and a little interesting thing before we talk about the game, because it just came out about an hour and a half ago. Zach Hyman is about to get back in the Leaf lineup. They've really missed him. He's he's sort of a heart and soul player, a good penalty killer, played on the line with Tavares and Marner, and scored 20 goals last year. I don't think he's a big scorer, but he's a worker, and this team, they have a lot of talented guys who sometimes don't work, so they need somebody who leads by example, and Hyman sort of does that. But him coming back, it's already started to have an effect. They're going to be down to 21 men on their roster, supposedly. Once they activate Hyman, they have to create cap space by getting down to 1 above the minimum, which is 20. And they today waived Nick Patan and Martin Marincin. Now, I can only dream that somebody claims Martin Marincin because it would relieve me of having to watch his idiocy.
I don't know if we'd be able to do anymore if that happened because that's just.
Yeah, I mean, please, it's like Thomas Caberlet trades or act. It's like how many times do I have to mention that Martin Marincin sucks? But Patan, this is the thing. They showcased him on Tuesday. They played him with Tavares and Marner, and then 2 days later, they placed him on waivers, which I would assume means they showcased him and nobody was interested.
I don't know. What I heard of this about Mick Patan. First of all, people think Patan is definitely an NHLer right now, and that that there's no space on that team, and that he needs to be in the NHL. The thing that you're seeing right now, because of the craziness of the salary cap and everything that's happening, is you're not going to see someone picked up off of waivers. It has to be a trade. Like they have to take something back. They have to figure something back. Whether it's got to be something. So that's where they're in trouble because they're making this move for roster spaces, right? So they're in a spot where they really no one is likely to pick him up, but he is he's the kind of guy that you can just see like being a Seattle Sasquatch and being like deadly. Like he seems like the kind of guy that really has like a spot.
Well, that's the reason why I believe they signed him to a 2-year deal but the thing is, if it's a 2-year deal, I still don't think he qualifies for they would have to sign him to another year deal to qualify for being part of the players that they have to offer up for expansion. He may not qualify based on the number of games that they have to play, which I think is 40. He's an extra piece, but you're right. They may have to send him, and he's got a 2-year deal right now, so he's signed through next year. So he probably gets through waivers, but a lot of people think, and he scored 5 points in 2 games in the AHL last weekend. He's too good for the AHL, I think on a lot of teams he'd be a 4th liner, but on a Babcock team that's got a lot of skill in the top 3 lines, he just cannot play skill guys on the 4th line as well. He's going to play muckers like Nick Shore and Freddie Gauthier, and I think that's a flaw in Babcock's character, but that's the way he wants to go.
If I'm San Jose, I jump on him. That's what I say in the waivers. I would do that. That's the one team I think that they need scoring. They need anything they can get right now. There's a spot for him there. I think they have, they have Marlowe and, Thornton, but they have this, who knows, this has got to be their last year, you would think, the way things are going, especially. I would jump. I mean, the Sharks, you can jump on them. I mean, I heard somebody today talking about the Sharks being possibly next year's, or trying to sell to their players that they are this year's St. Louis Blues.
They have the personnel. If everybody were to play like to their maximum potential, they could do a lot better. We all know that.
Yeah.
Just the big key for them is not to get too deep in a hole. But The only difference between the two teams is they don't have a Jordan Bennington to bail them out.
Right. And if you had a player who was more concentrating more on earning his $7 million salary and playing up to his abilities instead of booking IOUs at a casino in Vegas last April, then maybe they'd have a better start of the season. I mean, honestly, it's an embarrassment that this whole thing came up with Evander Kane. Again, off the ice stuff with Evander Kane, not on the ice stuff. But and that is a distraction. It just you can't sell it any other way. It's I think stupid that it's gone that far, and for a team that's having a bunch of problems right now on the ice, they don't need more off the ice distractions.
Yeah, I just think with better goaltending, they could turn this around, but they need better goaltending some way, somehow.
Yeah, no, they absolutely do, and they're not going to. I mean, you got to remember the St. Louis Blues turnaround was two things: it was goaltending and it was coaching, right? So
right,
they're not going to move. They're not Pete DeBoer.
Yeah, right, and this is the thing. If you're talking about goaltending, where do they go? Because first of all, they would have to trade Martin Jones in the deal because I think he's making around $6 million, and they have almost no cap space. So unless it's a goalie on a rookie contract who makes less than $1 million, you can't fit him.
Trade
so
him for Lock. I kid.
Oh no,
but no. What about picking Robin Leonard up out there? That's something that would be interesting. I think. Now,
yeah, I honestly don't think. Yeah, I mean, Russ came up with the one that makes sense, which was Corey Schneider.
Right.
I don't know how much, how much value. Right. I mean, he's.
That's a.
There's no guaranteed guy for them to get. There just isn't.
I mean, there's Anderson, Craig. I mean, I think I'd get Anderson out of
Ottawa ask for a lot.
Yeah. Right, but the problem there, Ak, is he's making $4.1 million. And Ottawa is not going to take back Martin Jones, and also Ottawa has no motivation to help San Jose out because they have San Jose's first round pick.
Right. If they were going to do that, Ottawa could try and force Bobby Ryan on the Sharks for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Bobby Ryan wouldn't be a bad idea in San Jose. Honestly, he wouldn't be. I mean. And then the contract is just crazy, but they need to do something. San Jose Red Wilson is definitely in a spot that he hates. You can tell it. Like talking to people around him, he's really frustrated because first of all, Wilson is not one of these guys who likes giving out the big contracts. He's been forced to give out in his mind,
right?
And now
Martin Jones has 4 more years at $5.75 million. That is as big a boat anchor as Seabrook, as Bobby Ryan, and that's a bad deal.
But the only difference is you end up when you have a guy like that. If he ends up as your backup, it hurts, but it doesn't hurt as much because he's not in the lineup all the time. You can't do anything about Seabrook, right? You're either in the lineup or not. At least Jones, they could limit his games, and then maybe you get better play.
Right. If you trade him to a team where that is not a cap team, that is a budget team, and they need that cap space or that cap hit to get to the salary or get to the cap floor, then he doesn't hurt you. And maybe he comes back and he plays anywhere close to what he used to be. But the problem is there are not many of those teams right now, and they will charge a premium to take on that salary, especially with so much term left.
I mean, but let's be fair. With the exception of last year, nobody saw this happening to Martin Jones. Nobody.
Yeah. No, that's true. No one did. I mean, I think that. I mean, Jones, remember, he was great in the San Jose Cup run. He was fantastic. I mean, he had everybody, and it just shows confidence. Confidence in hockey is such a big deal. It's big in every sport, but especially in goaltending. I think goaltending in hockey, and it brings me to my next point here, which is
I blame Danis Zubris because he retired after that Cup run, and maybe Jones needs him.
Danis Zubris, where's Ilka Sinisilo?
I used to go out.
Was on the team, Mike.
I think he's being reincarnated as Lindblom, actually. So that's all okay, so here's the deal. Carter Hart is starting tonight for the Flyers against the Montreal Canadiens after having a big game against Carolina, and obviously, I guess because he has 2 days off, and probably got a massage and has been relaxing in a meditative hot bath for the last 2 days, he's able to play again tonight. Because otherwise, if this was just one night, he wouldn't be able to play. But since
Right.
it's 2 days, he can play again. So he's going to be playing tonight. And he has had a pretty good hit record so far against the Canadians. He's had a pretty good. He's one of the teams he's beaten. I don't think he's lost to him yet. He's beaten him twice, I think. But what do you think, Russ? I mean, is this the right move?
I mean, it's the right move because he did have a good game. He wasn't fully last year's Carter Hart in that last game, though. He was not, but he was good. He was good. And so I think he earned another start. The issue that I have is, I guess Vigneault this morning gave out a quote that was something like, well, in the first year with the Rangers, when they went on the cup run, it took until like December for them to gel. And, I see things moving in the right direction here. The only problem is the Rangers had so much of a more talented blue line than this Flyers blue line.
Yeah.
That even if Gostisbehere goes back to normal, it's not even as close to as good as that Ranger blue line. That is the issue, really. And in this league, you need that. Like I pointed out to Mike, you had McDonough, you had Strawman, you had Stahl, a younger Stahl playing better. You had Girardi blocking 1 million shots, playing 1 million minutes. Like
all experienced guys too.
Yes, all experienced guys. Big difference. Big.
Right now is that you're seeing a lot of the Flyers' younger guys like Myers and Sanheim are all sort of getting that jittery thing at the same time. Sanheim falling down. There's so much to me that's insane. Like to me, obviously Sanheim can skate. Like he falls down, on three. That's not the issue.
Sanheim down is the new hashtag for sure.
I mean, he's a great skater.
He is.
It comes down to confidence. I mean, no one gets to the NHL without if they can't make.
Or the guy who sharpens the skates on the Flyers. If it's Derek, you got to do a better job, man.
I agree with that one. And it comes from just Sanheim trying to make some quick cuts and stuff like that. And just if you look at the ways he's fallen down, they've all been kind of the same way. A guy making an inside out move on him and trying to cut quickly instead of just trying to kind of keep the guy.
The brain is moving quicker than what the body can, and we've seen that in all sports. And when that happens, like in the NFL, you're trying to make the catch and run before you actually have the ball. The guy drops it.
Yeah,
we see this in every sport. We do.
Yes, it's very typical stuff. So it'll be a fun one for tonight for them.
But this is a tough game. I mean, this is a game where the speed of Montreal will definitely cause some problems for the Flyers. We don't know do we know who's in net for Montreal?
I think it's Price. I heard.
Okay,
it's got to be Price. It's got to be Price.
So with Price in net, I think this will be a very close game. Like I know the other night, the game was close until it wasn't, and Flyers fans got mad because when they scored 3 in the third, they didn't want to hear about Carolina's shortcomings. Yes, the Flyers did a lot of things right. There's no question. But Carolina stood around on the Konechny goal, and that Mrazek goal that he gave up on Claude Giroux that went 5-hole was a joke. I mean, Claude Giroux didn't even really fake him. He just he got ahead of it, and he had a breakaway, and he did a quick one-timer, right 5-hole, straight on goal. Like when you're a goalie like that, Eck, and you do a straight shot like that, and there's no way he's going to pick a corner, he's going to try 5-hole. Like
there's only one thing the goalie does wrong there, and but it is like, first of all, that the low shots like that, the quick one-time low shots are the hardest shots to stop sometimes. And you look back at some of the famous goals in hockey history, a lot of them are like that. They're like low. I mean, I think of the golden goal that Crosby scored, and that's along the ice.
But that's a high pressure one. This one, you're already down 3-1 in the game.
Yeah.
I'm just asking a goalie to react on a breakaway. He didn't even react.
All you're asking him to have his stick on the ice is really what it is. I mean, you're not having your stick on the ice. If you have your stick on your ice, you're going to stop that every time. But the problem, you don't have your stick on your ice, you're not going to be able to move your feet quick enough to make that. You're just not, because that's along the ice like that, moving your feet.
Was there any other possibility, knowing Claude Giroux, if you're the goalie, you're figuring this out in your head, where's he going to go? Where'd you think he was going to go?
But I also think Claude, who is known to make, like we've jokingly said, like 25 moves on breakaways, stuff like that.
No, he does it on a shootout. He doesn't do it on breakaway.
He still makes some moves, though. It kind of was surprising how quickly. It was a great play by Claude to get it off so fast. Like the idea that he must have seen the stick was not down, and he just put it down. That's like the whole thing.
I agree with that.
That's what I thought. So anyway, that's all I have for today, guys. Actually, we're out of time here, but I thank you all for watching. Thank you all for supporting us on patreon.com/hockey. You can go there and become a member of the show and help us out. And, it would be really, really appreciated. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you on Friday. That would be tomorrow. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Let's try that. Let's do tomorrow. That sounds good.